I want to talk a little bit about ghost blanket, which we said in our normal agriculture terms we call it mulch. So as we put it, first of all, what is the importance of ghost blanket? Before we go to the importance, conventional farming is advocated in many ways. Some people call it conventional way of farming. Others will go for organic farming, but sometimes they don't put the ghost blanket. So most of it, when you look at it, maybe they are putting some aspects of how to improve the agricultural patterns of the country or maybe the world at large. But the most thing they forget is they forget ghost blanket. And ghost blanket is like the love of God. God gave us His only Son. When we read in the book of John 3:16, we are told that for God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son. Whoever believes Him should not perish but have everlasting life. This is something that, can you imagine? I ask people, somebody leaving his own Son to come and die for us. But still, when Jesus was here, you see how the Sadducees and the Pharisees played around with Him. They didn't care about this man that God has sent. So they played around with Him. They were joking with Him, saying that if you are the Son of God, do this and that. Sometimes even with us, we have this ghost blanket with us. Some people have attended the training. They have been told the importance of the blanket, which here, it has many benefits. We saw yesterday from the experiment. It reduces the effect of the impact of the rain. When the rain falls, it falls on the blanket. It reduces the impact of the rain. Let me call Anthony, come here. You are a teacher, but I'll use an example. You can stand here. Then our sister also come. Okay, when you are walking on the road, and the rain comes with hailstones, and then we have these two guys. Anthony, how are you feeling? Then we have this one. So which one is going to be comfortable with the hailstone? So from there, when I can sit down, I've finished explaining about ghost blanket. I've seen the importance of ghost blanket. I don't know, how did you feel it? I did not have reduced. If I could add more. Yeah, that's what we have. That's how we have left our soils to be. All the rain, and this rain that fell there, it was just coming from about less than 10 centimeters. But this comes all the way from miles and miles above the ground, and it falls on our naked soil. So with those soils, they are carried away, they move, and then they leave our land bare. All the humus goes. So the rain, the ghost blanket reduces the impact of the rain and the hailstones on our land. So it does not compact our land. It also adds a lot of benefits, like when it rolls on the ground, it adds manure, how do you call it? It adds a lot of fertility, organic matter and fertility to our land. Some people go in and bury it, they bury it. When you bury the ghost blanket, you make the composition effect becomes faster, so they rot very quickly, so they don't have the good effect on producing the organic matter and the fertility to our ground. So God loved us. He gave us His only Son. The same He's doing even in our farming. Look at the way God farms. We talked yesterday about the forest, the natural forest. Have you seen God plowing them, turning them into the soil? The leaves, when they fall from the leaves, from the trees, do they get mixed with the soil? So why do we mix them? Then people also burn them. Why burn them? Yesterday when we were having an experiment, our friend says that after every somebody from, I think it was from Loitoktok, there was a friend who asked about, I cannot see him, there are many people, but he's not around. So he said that every time we finish harvesting, people get the match box, and then they burn the. Who has ever taken a knot, and then you take a matchstick and you burn it? So ghost blanket is like that shilling you have. You cannot take it and burn it. Make sure you use it in the correct way. Make sure you take care of it. It's very, very essential. In conventional farming, we leave ourselves to be naked, not covered at all. And sometimes we don't. Some people have gone in taking the blanket and also putting it and mixing it. When you are given a blanket, do you sleep on it? Do you put it under the mattress? No, you cover it. You cover it. It covers you to get the warmth. So for us to cover our soils, for them to get the benefit of the warmth, we have left them in the cold and they have suffered a lot. There are many ways of getting the blanket. Get the correct type of trees to give you the leaves. We talked of acidic trees, like the eucalyptus, the cypress. Those trees, when you plant them, they don't allow anything to grow them, showing that they are kind of acidic. They are acidic. They don't allow you to. The leaves cannot allow anything to grow beneath them. So same when you put it on your land. I have an experience. There were some cypress trees cut on my farm that I'm working on right now for about 2 years. Whenever we had the cypress trees, crops have not picked up for the last 2.5 years. Just because, can you imagine they are not there for 2 years, but still the effect can be seen. So how about if you put it? So you are affecting that place. So you can get leaves from all kinds of trees, except most acidic soils that they cannot allow anything to. Even there are some trees, a single grass cannot grow beneath them. So get the leaves from such trees, like avocados. You have most natural trees like mahamia and others. Get leaves. Get leaves. Get grasses. I mean, get grasses. Or many types of grasses. They can work very well for our farms. Maize stalks. Maize stalks can work very well, and all other kinds of. You can even grow your own mulch if you don't have your mulch. Have some rows on your farm. Grow your own mulch, like what I'm doing right now. My farm. I know people are. By the time we plant, we can have some mulch. By the time now it goes and you can see some gaps in our farms. By that time you don't have the blanket. What are you going to do? You can grow your own mulch. I've taken like 1/10 of an acre. I want to grow my own mulch, so that's going to be to add on the other parts. When you apply ghost blanket, we say you start small. Don't go in and because now you are excited about farming ghost way. You will go and take 2 acres. You scatter the ghost blanket. No, start faithfully. You can even grow the whole farm with our rope, but start small. You have blanket for only 2 lines out of 50 lines. Start with those 2. As you continue by, you will be getting more blanket, and then you add the other lines. For example, for my farm, like the maize farm, I had 56 lines. The first year, I only did 7 lines because that is what I had. Last year, I added to 30. So this year, I'm going to add the rest, about to reach around 40. So you cannot get started and you finish the whole farm at once. So go, be faithful with a small portion. Don't now go, some people here, maybe you are working for an organization, you want to impress them, you are going to put in 1 acre the whole of it. Something that was supposed to be done for maybe 1/10 or 2/10 of an acre, you are scattering. Just like we call it a sheet. I enjoy my people there, some farmers who are scattering. That is not a blanket, this is a piece of sheet that you are putting on your farm. So like what God loved us and gave us His only Son. For that love, let us also have love for our soils. Let us put God's blanket. And God's blanket, what size are you going to put? It's 100%. Cover the soil with God's blanket, 100% or 2.5 centimeters thick. Are you together? 2.5 centimeters thick. If you have more, maybe you have filled the farm and you have more, keep it. Keep it for another time. When you are planting, at the start of planting, don't put a lot of blanket. Yesterday when I was walking around, some people say, I have some leaves somewhere. I'm going to, today in the evening, I'm going to tell people to start putting it on the ground. Yes, it is good, but don't put more than 100%. It will give you a lot of time when you're opening up the planting stations that we are told. You want to open up, you take a lot of time to remove it for you to dig the planting station. So put it 100% or 2.5 centimeters thick. I've told you about the sources of the ghost blanket. The leaves, grasses, maize stalks, some bushes, some herbs, shrubs I mean, that are not that heavy, that can be put on the ground. I saw that one in Uganda. Some farmers really took care of the chicken. They were getting the ghost blanket, then they get some shrubs and put on top of them, so the chicken cannot come there and scratch the farm. So they took care of that one. By the time the crops now have come up, even if they remove now the sticks and go even use as firewood, they still have their blanket and their crops were safe. So it is another way of you taking care of your mulch or your ghost blanket. Something also about ghost blanket. I told you yesterday when I was talking about understanding God's self-sufficiency. God gave us this blanket. When you get started, you see like there is no blanket. But when you open up your mind, a blanket is all over. You become a hyena for searching for God's blanket. Whenever you found it, we had our sister who told us that he has friends with a lot of mango trees. Carry sacks and everything to go and put them in the garden. So look for the many sources of having the ghost blanket to source them. I think we don't have much on that. As we continue, we are talking more and more about ghost blanket. And maybe if you have a question about that, ghost blanket. Yes.
Well, I started to become a beggar in supermarkets for cartons when they don't have this shiny color. So we take the, this tape off.
The cardboard?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so we use that. How do you recommend that?
Well, so she's asking, many people call it cardboard or boxes that doesn't have plastic on it. It's good. We don't promote it in our list of materials because most rural farmers wouldn't have access to it. And then when you list it, it makes it sound like you need it. But we're trying to get them to look at things that are available to them. But if it's available to you, no problem. It's not a problem. Cardboard, it works very well. It will slowly decay as well. It's a good, makes a very good, I almost, not really a blanket, almost like a mat. But still the same idea. And it will cover things. You just have to be careful where the joints are. That's often where things try to come through. And then before I put it on, I would wet it. Because it somehow needs to get integrated into the soil. Its tendency in hot, dry weather is to dry and blow away. So it has to have a way, even some blankets sometimes. I know water is not a common, it's not easily to find these days. But you might be worried about your blanket blowing away. But after the first rain, it kind of holds it down, and then eventually the organisms start working on it and make it sort of one with the soil. That would happen with the cardboard. So yes, cardboard is usable. If you have access to it, no problem. We just don't promote it overtly because it just kind of, it's a list of something that most people would ask, what is that? And where would I get it? And now but if I was in Canada, America, maybe Europe, I would list cardboard because it's being recycled anyways, and it's quite available because it's always, we put next to our curb once a week or twice a month, we put things like cardboard.
Do you cut it into pieces?
The cardboard, I wouldn't shred it or cut it. I would just make sure that it fit properly between my rows. So I wouldn't want it being so wide that it goes over another row. It should fit, but I wouldn't break it down, because the more you cut it up, the quicker it's going to disappear on your land. So just leave it. It's good. It's very high in carbon, so it won't, it won't go away quickly.
What about when it rains and it is spread just like
Yeah,
will it help with the water?
The water will not pass through as quickly, but it might pool a bit, and you might get some evaporation, but it should essentially work like God's blanket. But it won't have that multi-layered effect of moving through it. But it's good. If you can access it, it's good. Yeah. So it's a fair choice. But just remember, when you're promoting anything in Farming God's Way, run it through the filter of the poor. What will the poor person think about this thing that I'm suggesting? Do they have it? If I did a workshop in the village and I listed felt pens, cardboard, nylon ropes, hammers, nails, all of a sudden they're like, okay, are you bringing them to us? We don't have them. If I mention stones for hammers, mulch, dead grass and leaves for mulch.
Yes, we have.
Yeah, so you have to get, you yourself as a trainer, as an advocate, as a helper of the poor, you have to put in your brain and in your heart, what do the poor have? I need to talk about what they have. They may not see it. I need to bring their attention to it. But if I start listing things that are available to me in the city, it's a filter which will actually push them out of this whole way of farming. So that's practically where the heart for the poor kind of takes root, is what am I telling these people to do? Am I telling them to do something that they can do? Am I telling them about inputs that they have available? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. But a great question, and cardboard is definitely usable.
One more question.
I just want to ask you about sawdust. Maybe sometimes you are in an area where you can access sawdust. Is it the best way you can use that as a blanket?
Okay. For sawdust also, that organic aspect is not that in it very much. But you can put it, but very little.
It's high in carbon. It will work. But what I found with sawdust, it actually doesn't allow moisture to penetrate, especially if it's at any thickness. I'm not talking about shavings, I'm talking about sawdust. So what happens, I tried it myself. It kind of compacts, and then it rains, and then it absorbs just in the top centimeters, and for some reason, it's too dry. It won't allow moisture to pass through. It actually becomes a barrier to moisture. That's my experience. Maybe very small amounts would be okay, but sawdust I don't think is the best thing, just because of its texture. Has anyone else had the same experience? That's been my experience with sawdust.
Well, maybe not enough experience, but we have chicken manure with, the chicken in running on sawdust, and then it is mixed, and then you have different levels of degradation.
No, that's very fine. It's very common, for the chickens to be running on sawdust. It's fine, it's integrated, and actually the nitrogen in the manure is actually already working on breaking down that carbon, so on breaking it down. So it's not a problem. But pure sawdust at any thickness, I don't think it's advisable. Shavings, when they're planing, those curly things, those are better. They tend to let the water pass through them. But they're also, you need quite a certain amount of them, because they have quite a few gaps in them. They will allow sun still to get through. So you need a certain amount of the shavings. But yeah, it's good to use what you have. If you have a mill near you, you can use them. But the dust, I wouldn't.